You've heard it's just loneliness, a feeling to be ignored, shrugged off, or blamed on age. But here's the truth. Recent studies prove that social isolation now kills more seniors every year than diabetes and raises your risk of early death as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Nobody's talking about this silent epidemic, but by the end of this episode, you'll know the 5 science-backed ways to fight back and the surprising mistake that's putting millions of seniors in danger right now. I have to say, Dr. Harper, this is a topic that's personal to me. Just last week, my neighbor Betty, she's in her late 70s, widowed for a few years now. She stood at her window and waved as I was walking my dog. I called out, "How are you?" She smiled, but I could see the tiredness behind her eyes. Later, she told me something that stuck with me all week. She said, "You know, Susan, I never imagined the hardest part of getting older would be how quiet life gets. Sometimes I go a whole day and never hear my own name. That nearly broke my heart." We worry so much about falls or memory loss or heart attacks, but almost nobody warns you that the worst danger can just be silence.
You're absolutely right, Susan. And Betty's story is, sadly, one I hear every week in my practice. The truth is, science has only recently begun to reveal how deadly that silence really is. There was a study published in Nature Aging just this year showing that seniors suffering from chronic loneliness have a 30% higher risk of stroke and are 50% more likely to develop dementia. I don't say that to scare anyone, but to wake us all up. This isn't just about feeling sad or bored. Loneliness actually rewires your brain and body. It changes how your immune system works. It pushes your stress hormones through the roof, and it raises your risk of early death as much as a pack-a-day smoking habit. And here's something that most people don't realize, Susan. Loneliness acts fast. In a University of Chicago study, older adults who reported feeling isolated showed measurable declines in their immune system within just 3 weeks. That means it's not just something that wears you down over years. It can start hurting your health almost immediately. You see more infections, slower recovery from illnesses, more inflammation in the blood. These are the same mechanisms we see in people under chronic physical stress.
That's honestly terrifying. And what gets me is how invisible it all is. I mean, nobody would look at Betty and say, "Oh, she's at risk of a heart attack because she hasn't had a good conversation this week." We check our cholesterol, we count our steps. But when was the last time a doctor asked, "Who did you talk to this week?" Or "When did you last feel truly connected?"
That's the problem, Susan. In medicine, we've always focused on the numbers: blood pressure, blood sugar, heart rate. But there's a missing number: connection. In fact, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine put out a report in 2023 estimating that nearly 1 in 4 Americans aged 65 and older are socially isolated. That's almost 14 million seniors facing higher risk for heart disease, strokes, even premature death, all because of lost social bonds. And yet most healthcare providers rarely screen for loneliness. We treat what we can see. But so often when a patient comes in with a cascade of health problems, falls, memory lapses, chronic pain, the root cause hiding underneath is loneliness. And the cruelest part, many seniors try to hide it. There's a stigma. People feel ashamed or blame themselves or just don't want to burden others, so they keep quiet and their risk keeps growing.
I'll be honest, Dr. Harper, I felt it myself sometimes, especially after my kids moved out. You don't want to admit it, but there are days when the phone doesn't ring and you start to wonder, would anyone notice if I was gone? That's not easy to say out loud.
That right there, Susan, is what so many people are going through, but few ever say. And it's dangerous to think you're alone in feeling lonely. In reality, you're in the majority. The CDC recently called loneliness and isolation a hidden public health crisis, one that's only getting worse after the pandemic. In fact, a Harvard adult development study in 2024 followed thousands of seniors and found that social isolation increased the risk of early death by 29%. That's not just a statistical blip. That's a risk as real and serious as high blood pressure or smoking. But unlike those problems, most people never even realize it's happening until it's already taken a toll. And the physical effects are real. For example, new research out of UCLA showed that the same brain regions that register physical pain light up when people feel rejected or isolated. Your body actually responds to loneliness as if it's a physical injury. Over time, this drives up blood pressure, messes with your immune response, and even shrinks parts of the brain tied to memory and emotional regulation. That's why you see higher rates of cognitive decline, more falls, and greater risk of infection among isolated seniors. It's not just in your head, it's all through your body.
I never thought of it that way. It really changes how I see some of the people in my life. Betty, my neighbor, she used to be so active, walking, gardening, going to bingo every week. But after her husband died, she just started skipping things. First it was a few missed calls, then she stopped going out at all, and now she barely leaves her house. I always wondered if it was just grief, or maybe just slowing down with age, but it sounds like her body is literally responding to being alone.
Exactly. And it can sneak up on anyone. There's a study I often share from the Journal of Gerontology. They followed over 1,000 older adults for 2 years. The seniors who felt the most lonely were nearly twice as likely to suffer falls or have accidents at home. Why? Because loneliness doesn't just affect your mood. It affects your focus, your balance, your energy. It can even lead to forgetting medications, eating poorly, or not getting enough sleep, all of which make you more vulnerable to illness and injury. I'll tell you a story that still haunts me. A few years ago, I was treating a retired firefighter named Ed. He was tough, proud, never missed a shift, never complained. After his wife passed away, Ed started missing church, stopped calling his old buddies, let his routines slip. When he finally came to see me, it was for pneumonia. He'd never smoked a day in his life, but his body had just stopped fighting. The thing is, we treated his lungs, but nobody asked about his heart, his emotional life. He ended up back in the hospital 3 more times that year, not because of a virus, but because of a silence that never left his home.
It's heartbreaking, and it makes me wonder how many people are living like Ed and Betty, quietly slipping away without anyone noticing. And I'm thinking now, if it can happen to people who always seemed so strong, maybe it could happen to anyone.
You're absolutely right. And the worst part, the most isolated seniors are often the best at hiding it. Stanford's Center on Longevity did a study last year that showed seniors who felt the most lonely were also the least likely to ask for help or mention it to anyone. They put on a brave face. They tell their doctors and family, "I'm fine." But behind closed doors, their health is quietly crumbling. There's another layer here too, Susan. Accidental isolation. Many times, loneliness doesn't happen because someone chooses to withdraw. It's a series of little changes. A friend moves away, you stop driving at night, a loved one passes, or even just retiring from a busy job. Suddenly, the days are longer and the world feels smaller. Research from the University of Michigan shows that these small, unplanned shifts, losing a regular activity or no longer having a reason to leave the house, can tip someone from occasionally lonely to dangerously isolated in a matter of months.
That's exactly what happened to Betty. She lost her walking group, then stopped going to the grocery store herself. Then one day she realized she had barely left her home in a week. It happened so slowly, she didn't even notice it until I pointed it out.
And that's why awareness is so critical. If you're listening to this right now and wondering, is this me? You're not alone. I actually recommend a simple connection audit. No fancy technology, just 3 questions you ask yourself honestly. When was the last time you had a real, meaningful conversation? How many days in the past week have you spent entirely alone? No phone calls, no visitors. And is there anyone you could call right now just to talk about how you're feeling? If you struggle to answer, or if those numbers look bad, that's your sign. It's time to take action. And the stakes are high. A study from the University of Michigan I mentioned earlier found that seniors who scored low on these questions had a 70% higher risk of hospitalization in the following year. That's not a scare tactic, it's real data.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking about my own answers, and I bet a lot of our listeners are too. It's easy to tell yourself, oh, it's just a phase, or everyone gets lonely sometimes. But the way you're describing it, it's like a slow poison working its way through your life without you even realizing it.
That's a powerful way to put it, Susan, and that's why we need to talk about it openly, honestly, without shame. Because the good news is, it's never too late to start reversing the damage. The body and mind are more resilient than people realize. I've seen seniors reconnect after decades, and their blood pressure, memory, and even sense of purpose improve in ways medicine alone could never achieve. But here's where many people stumble. They think it's too late, or that they're too old to start again. I want to bust that myth right now. Studies from the AARP Foundation show that even small changes, like calling an old friend, joining a local group, or volunteering, can dramatically lower your risk of heart attack and depression in just a few months. And there are new evidence-based programs springing up everywhere, from community centers to online support circles. The tools are out there.
I love that. And I want to ask, for everyone who's feeling a bit stuck or maybe embarrassed to reach out, what's the very first, smallest step they can take, even if it feels awkward or uncomfortable?
Start by telling someone you trust, just one person, how you're really feeling. Don't sugarcoat it. You can even use the words, "I'm lonely," and "I'd like to talk more often." Research from the British Medical Journal in 2023 showed that simply naming the feeling out loud cut rates of depression and anxiety in half over 6 months. That's the power of honesty. And here's the next step, Susan, for everyone listening. In just a minute, I'll walk you through a simple, practical reconnection plan you can try this week, no matter your mobility or resources. It's based on what the newest research tells us about rebuilding lost connections, even if you feel like you've run out of options. And I'll share a story of a woman in her 80s who thought she was too old for friends until she found a way to change everything. You won't want to miss what happened next.
So, Dr. Harper, you mentioned a reconnection plan, a way out, even for people who feel stuck or too embarrassed to reach out. I'm all ears, and I know Betty, and honestly, probably half the people on my block need to hear this. Where does someone start, especially if they feel the world has just moved on without them?
The very first step is to realize that reconnecting doesn't have to be dramatic. Most people imagine they have to join a club. I'll tell you about Joyce. Joyce is 82, lives alone, has arthritis that keeps her home most days. She felt invisible, as she put it, until her daughter gave her a challenge. Every day for 1 week, reach out to one person, in any way. Call, text, wave at the mail carrier, even write a postcard. At first, she said it felt silly, even scary, but by the end of the week, she was smiling more, sleeping better, and, this is wild, her blood test at her next checkup showed her inflammation markers were lower. This lines up with a 2024 study from King's College London. Seniors who made intentional one new connection a day saw a measurable drop in blood pressure and stress hormones in just 3 weeks.
That's incredible. One connection a day. It sounds so simple, but for someone who's used to their own company, I imagine even that can feel like climbing a mountain. What about people who say, but I have nobody left? Maybe they've lost friends, family moved away, or they've just fallen out of touch for years.
That's such an important question. The loneliness trap often tricks people into believing the pool of possible connections is gone forever. But research from the University of California found that most seniors, even those who felt completely alone, actually had at least 5 potential contacts, old friends, neighbors, even distant relatives within reach, if only they took the first step. The hardest part is the first moment of vulnerability. Sometimes it all takes is a simple message, "I was thinking of you," or a question, "How are you holding up?" I've seen estranged siblings reunite, neighbors become friends, even lifelong rivals become lunch buddies. The data backs this up. A study in aging and mental health found that seniors who reached out, even just once, reported a 22% increase in overall life satisfaction within a month. That's not magic, that's chemistry. Oxytocin, serotonin, all those connection hormones come flooding back.
I love that. And it makes me think about Betty. She's always had a green thumb. What if instead of just gardening alone, she invited a neighbor's grandchild to help plant some seeds, or swapped plants with someone down the street? Even sharing a cup of tea on the porch is a start, right?
Exactly. And here's something fascinating. A Japanese study from 2023 found that the act of sharing a daily ritual, even as simple as tea or a crossword puzzle, cut loneliness scores by 40% in seniors over 6 months. The key wasn't the activity itself, but the routine of being expected, seen, and valued. Loneliness thrives in the absence of expectation. It dies when someone is waiting for you, even if it's just for 10 minutes. And let's talk about something that holds a lot of people back, the fear of being the needy one or the fear of rejection. The truth is, almost everyone is looking for more connection. Most people are waiting for someone else to take the first step. In fact, the Global Loneliness Survey in 2023 found that 67% of people over 60 wished they had more close friends, but 80% said they were too afraid to reach out first. The irony is, you're never as alone as you feel.
That statistic hits home. I think of the times I wanted to call my sister, but thought, she's busy, I don't want to bother her. And every day that passes, it feels harder to break the silence.
And you're not alone in that, Susan. That's why step 2 is reframing the story you tell yourself about connection. Instead of thinking, "I'll be a burden," try, "I'll be a blessing." That tiny shift, even if you have to fake it at first, opens the door to a new reality. And science supports this. Harvard's Good Life study tracked seniors who saw themselves as contributors, not just receivers, and found they lived longer, healthier lives and bounced back from illness faster. Connection isn't charity, it's an exchange, and you have so much to give.
I have to ask, what about people with mobility issues? Maybe they can't drive anymore or have health problems that make it hard to get out. Is there hope for them too?
Absolutely. In fact, some of the most profound stories of reconnection I've seen have come from people homebound. The difference now compared to even 5 years ago is technology. Even the simplest tools, phone calls, video chats, voice messages, can bridge huge distances. The National Institute on Aging found in a 2024 trial that seniors who used weekly video calls saw a 15% improvement in memory scores and a 30% drop in depression symptoms compared to those who didn't. But it's not just about screens. There are telephone friendship programs now, like the AARP's Friendly Voice Line, where volunteers call to chat, no computer required. Community organizations, faith groups, even local libraries offer call and checklists. Sometimes all it takes is letting one person know you'd like a call each week. And there's a woman I'll never forget, Margaret, age 90, wheelchair-bound, no surviving family, living in a rural area. She started hosting postcard clubs by mail, sending and receiving cards with other seniors around the country. It changed her life. She told me, "Every time I get a card, I know I still matter to someone." And research from Oxford found that regular written correspondence boosted well-being nearly as much as face-to-face visits for isolated seniors.
That's beautiful. I think so many people just want to feel remembered, even in a small way. But you mentioned something earlier, accidental isolation. That idea scares me. How do we guard against slipping into loneliness without noticing? What warning signs should families and friends be watching for?
That's one of the most important and overlooked questions. Accidental isolation is sneaky because it feels like nothing. It's missing a few events, losing a ride to the store, letting routines slide. But left unchecked, it spirals. Here's the twist. The earlier you spot it, the easier it is to reverse. A landmark Dutch study in gerontology and geriatric medicine showed that seniors who made one small change, adding a weekly coffee with a neighbor, walking with a friend, or joining a virtual book club, saw a 32% reduction in loneliness within 3 months. The earlier the intervention, the bigger the benefit.
So, for anyone listening who's worried about a friend or maybe seeing themselves in these signs, what's the best way to bring it up? Because I know for me, the words, "are you lonely?" feel heavy, almost invasive.
That's a wonderful point, Susan. The question isn't, are you lonely? It's, how are you really? Or, who did you talk to this week? Or even, I miss hearing your stories. Can we catch up soon? And for caregivers or family, I always suggest making connection part of the routine, not an extra. Instead of, let me know if you need anything, say, how about we talk every Thursday morning? Predictability and expectation help rebuild those neural pathways of belonging.
I love that. Making connection a habit, not a chore. I want to circle back to something you said earlier, Dr. Harper, about a woman who thought she was too old for friends and then changed everything. Can you tell us her story?
Absolutely. Her name is Estelle. She was 86 when her husband passed. She told me, I buried all my friends already and I'm too tired to start over. For months she did nothing but watch TV and read the newspaper. Her daughter grew concerned. Estelle had lost weight, become forgetful, and seemed withdrawn. One day, on a whim, Estelle's daughter signed her up for a local storytelling group that met online. The first session, Estelle barely spoke, but by week 3, she was sharing stories from her childhood and, more importantly, laughing with strangers. 6 months later, she said, I thought I was too old for new friends. I was wrong. I'm more alive now than I've been in years. Her memory improved, her blood pressure normalized, and her doctor even reduced her medication for anxiety. The change wasn't just emotional, it was physical and measurable. This is what connection does. It doesn't just ease loneliness, it reverses decline. And that's not just Estelle. A 2024 review in the American Journal of Psychiatry found that every new social bond, no matter how small, reduces risk of death and disability in seniors by 7%. That's more effective than some medications.
That's inspiring. I'm thinking of all the Estelles out there who might just need a nudge, a reason to say yes to something new. But let's be real, not every attempt will work. What about setbacks? What about the times you reach out and nobody answers, or you try a new group and it feels awkward? How do you keep going?
Such a real question. Connection isn't always easy. Sometimes you do get ignored. Sometimes it is awkward. But the trick is persistence and variety. If one door closes, try another. Maybe a group isn't a fit, but a walking buddy is. Maybe family is busy, but a neighbor has time for coffee. Even pets count. Seniors who care for animals report lower loneliness and better mood, according to a 2023 study from the Human-Animal Bond Research Institute. The key is to treat connection like medicine, daily, in different forms, and with patience. And if you're discouraged, remember, every attempt strengthens those social muscles, even if it doesn't lead to a lifelong friendship. And in a moment, Susan, I want to share 3 powerful, research-backed exercises that can help anyone, no matter their situation, build connection in small, safe ways. These are the same techniques I give to my patients, and the results are often surprising.
3 exercises. I can't wait to hear those. But before we dive in, I want to thank you for making this feel so possible, even for those who feel lost. If you're listening, maybe write down one thing you'll try this week, even if it's just waving to your neighbor or calling an old friend. Dr. Harper, what's the first of those exercises?
We'll start with the gratitude call. Research shows that when you reach out just to say thank you or to express appreciation, people respond warmly and you feel better too. But there's more to it, and I'll explain exactly how and why it works right after this.
I'm ready, Dr. Harper. Let's dive in. What's the first exercise for anyone who wants to reconnect but doesn't know where to start?
The first exercise I recommend is called the gratitude call. It's simple, but incredibly powerful. Choose someone who's done something kind for you, recently or long ago. Call them or even write a letter and just say, "I was thinking about you and wanted to thank you for." Here's what the research says. A 2022 study at the University of Texas found that seniors who made a gratitude call or wrote a thank you letter once a week reported a 23% drop in feelings of loneliness after a month. Not only that, but people who received these calls often called back, starting a new pattern of connection.
That's beautiful. And I can see how it works. When you thank someone, you're not just connecting, you're reminding yourself that you matter to someone else, and they matter to you. Do you have an example from your practice where this changed someone's life?
Absolutely. One of my patients, Gloria, hadn't spoken to her childhood friend in over a decade. She worried it would feel awkward, but decided to call and thank her for a small act of kindness from years before. That one call rekindled their friendship. Now they talk every Sunday. Gloria's mood, sleep, even her chronic pain improved. That's how strong social bonds are. They're medicine. The second exercise is called the neighbor's invitation. Research out of the Mayo Clinic in 2023 showed that simply inviting a neighbor to share a cup of tea, sit outside, or take a short walk once a week cut self-reported loneliness nearly in half among seniors. The act of reaching out, especially locally, builds a web of small but meaningful ties. It doesn't need to be a party. It could be, "Would you like to join me for coffee?" Or, "I have extra flowers. Would you like some?" Small gestures, huge impact.
It really is about those tiny steps, isn't it? I know I used to overthink things like, oh, I should plan something big, and then I'd get overwhelmed and do nothing. But a cup of tea? That's doable. And I love that research supports these simple things. Sometimes it feels like health advice is always complicated, but this is so practical.
That's exactly right. The third exercise is the connection calendar. This is a simple, visible way to remind yourself and others that social connection is a priority. Take a calendar and each week write down one social goal. Call my sister, attend church, send a postcard, wave to 3 neighbors. A large 2023 trial in Sweden found that seniors who used a connection calendar for 90 days experienced measurable improvements in blood pressure, memory, and mood. It creates a sense of purpose, anticipation, and accomplishment, even when you're starting from scratch. And you don't have to do it alone. Get a friend, caregiver, or family member to help brainstorm ideas. For some, it becomes a fun challenge, like, how many new people can I greet this week? It shifts the mindset from isolation to exploration.
I love the idea of a connection calendar. And honestly, just hearing these stories makes me feel less alone. It's easy to believe you're the only one struggling, but that's never true. Let's talk about families for a moment. I know a lot of adult children worry about their parents being isolated, but aren't sure how to help. What's the best way for them to open that conversation, especially if their loved one is stubborn or embarrassed?
Great question. The first rule is never to approach it as fixing someone. Instead, share your own feelings. Say, I miss you, or I love hearing your stories. Invite your loved one to help you with something. Ask for a favorite recipe, advice, or to share a memory. Sometimes just saying, I worry about you and want to spend more time together is enough to break through. The key is warmth, not pressure. If you live far away, set regular calls. Weekly is best, even if they're short. Texting photos, sending funny cards, or arranging group video calls are all great. For stubborn loved ones, start small, like, I'd love to hear about your favorite movie growing up. Can we talk for 10 minutes? And remember, it's normal for people to resist at first. What matters is consistency. Over time, those little check-ins become the glue that holds relationships together.
That's such good advice. I know for me, the hardest part is when someone brushes off my concern with, I'm fine, don't worry about me. How do you know when to push and when to just keep showing up?
It's a balance. Never force, but never disappear either. Most people, even if they say, I'm fine, secretly appreciate the attention. If you sense someone is struggling, keep inviting. Don't give up after one try. And here's something powerful. Sometimes the right moment is when you share your own loneliness. Vulnerability creates connection. I had a patient who started every call with, I'm not doing so great today. How about you? That honesty unlocked conversations her family never had before. If things feel really serious, if you see signs of depression, self-neglect, or sudden withdrawal, don't hesitate to reach out for help. There are professionals, volunteers, and community organizations trained for just this situation.
I think there's a real power in being open. Just listening to this conversation, I feel more hopeful. Dr. Harper, before we wrap up, are there any last words you want to share with anyone who feels lost in loneliness right now?
Yes, you are never truly alone, even if it feels that way. There are people out there who want and need to hear your story, your laugh, your voice. Sometimes it takes courage to take the first step, but the reward is so much greater than the risk. And here's the truth. Every day is a new chance. It's never too late. I've seen people in their 90s find new best friends, fall in love again, rediscover hobbies, or just enjoy a warm conversation on the porch. Science proves, and life proves, that connection heals. And to anyone listening, if you do nothing else, try one small act of reaching out this week. It could change everything.
Thank you, Dr. Harper. That's exactly the kind of reassurance we all need. Before we say goodbye, I want to leave everyone with this. Loneliness is not a personal failure. It's a human experience, and it's one you can change. One conversation, one act of kindness, one moment of courage at a time. I also want to tease next week's episode because I think it's just as important. Next week, we'll reveal the hidden signs of bone loss every senior needs to know before it's too late. If you thought bone health was just about milk and calcium, what we're about to share could surprise you. And if this episode helped you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it. Remember, connection starts with you.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you to everyone listening. Your story matters. Don't let it go unheard.
Take care, everyone. See you next week.